Hey guys, it's your girl Chef Sahera here, and I want to welcome you back to another video in our Before You Bake Basics series. Once again, my goal in this series is to provide bakers of all levels with the essential baking knowledge that paves the way for success along their baking journey. In this video, we will discuss the importance of accuracy. Accuracy is crucial when it comes to baking, if you want to bake on a professional level or bake like the pros. So the first thing you need to know about baking is that baking is a science. Baking calls for accurate and precise measurements of ingredients. That's what science is. It's the accuracy in its methods and results that can be reproduced consistently. If certain steps are not followed consistently, you will have very different results. One suggestion that I have is to not tackle baking in the same manner that you tackle cooking. You know, when we cook, we can add a little of this, little of that, without really measuring things out. We go by taste. Baking is very different. I find that a lot of people who know how to cook either shy away from baking or they use the same approach. I'll add a little of this, a little of that. But baking is very different than cooking. So, to achieve consistent results when it comes to baking, professional bakers or chefs use scales. The baker's term for weighing ingredients is called scaling. One of the first things that I learned day one of culinary school was how to use a scale, how and why we use a scale. Every ingredient that we used in a recipe was measured with a scale. I've been using a scale ever since. I don't bake without a scale. A scale is part of my tools. And as you notice, scales are the number one item in my list of essential tools. If you want to bake on a level above the rest, if you want to set your stuff apart from the person next door who's making cupcakes, you need a scale. A good kitchen scale is fairly inexpensive and pretty simple to use. It can be the determining factor in the final outcome of your baked goods. Scales are far more accurate than measuring cups, which means you can be sure that if you follow the recipe exactly right, you'll get the same result each and every time. Ounces are a unit used to measure weight. This measurement is more often used with dry ingredients, like when we measure our flour, our sugar, but can also be used for things like honey and yogurt. Most professional recipes are listed by weight. Measuring cups are not an accurate way of measuring ingredients. Let me repeat that. Measuring cups are not an accurate way of measuring ingredients. So let me give you an example of how using dry measuring cups, we call them dry measuring cups, but measuring cups, it's not an accurate way of measuring your ingredients. Because it measures volume, I want you to take a look at this example. Imagine scooping a cup of flour and leveling the flour off with your finger, knife, what have you. Now you have a perfect cup of flour. Now you're ready to get started. But let's say you gently tap the same cup of flour down on the counter a few times. The flour settles and now you no longer have a cup of flour. Try this at home. Flour can settle down or fluff up depending on factors such as how old it is, how you scooped it into the cup, and how humid it's that day. The way you scoop a cup of flour may be slightly different than the way I scoop a cup of flour. I also know that measuring cups are, there's, even though it's shaped like a cup, some have slightly different shapes. So that can also play a factor. So scales, again, measures ounces. So if we take 100 grams of flour, let's say 1 cup equals 100 grams, then 100 grams is 100 grams. So if I scoop a cup of flour, I may get 110 grams. You may get 115 grams. But if I say, give me 100 grams, you'll go to your scale 100 grams. There's no in between. 100 grams is the same any time of the day. So I hope this makes sense to you. But if not, if you still have questions about it, then drop it in the comment section and I'll be sure to answer your question. So let's just talk about some of the benefits of using scales and why we use scales. Not only is it a more accurate way, but let me just give you some of the benefits of using scales. For starters, when you use a scale, you can put your ingredients directly from the container, your bag of flour, your bag of sugar, directly into your mixing bowl without the hassle of looking for the right measuring cup, and you will have fewer dishes to wash. So one of the benefits of using a scale is that it makes baking neater and it's faster. As you begin to get more comfortable with using scales, what you can do is measure each ingredient separately as you're practicing, right? So if you have 1,100 grams of sugar, let's say 1,400 grams of flour. In the beginning, I would recommend you separate each ingredient, but as you learn how to use the scale, you'll be able to dump that flour directly on with that sugar in one bowl. Scales are very important, and again, one of the benefits is that it makes it faster and neater. Another benefit would be that it's easier to increase and decrease your recipes. So, for an example, let's say you have 400 grams of flour, right? So, if we cut that in half, now you only want 1/4, right? So now we know that you only need 100 grams of flour. Let's say you wanted to cut that recipe into half, 200 grams, right? So it's easier to increase and decrease. Let's say you wanted to multiply by 4. Now you know you need 1,600 as opposed to saying, I need 12 cups of flour, because you're bound to lose track of the number of cups that you've already used between like 8 and 9. Now you have to start all over. But if you have a scale and you just dump all your ingredients into that one bowl, measuring 1,600 grams, that's it. It's done. It's easy, as opposed to scooping 10, 11, 12 cups of flour. Also, for an example, let's say you have a recipe calls for 1/3 cup of sugar. How do you break that in half? What you would have to do is figure out what 1/3 cup of sugar equals, right? So let's say it equals roughly 80 grams, right? So now we know if we want half of that, it's 40 grams. I've never seen what would be 1/3 cup. 1/6? I've never seen a 1/6 cup. So this is why we use scales, so we can increase and decrease our recipes. So also, another benefit of using a scale is portion control, right? We use scales you can portion out your cookie dough, your cake pops. If you want everything to be nice and even, let's say, let's say you roll cookie dough, depending on what dough it is. I'm not talking like a cookie dough that I would scoop with a ice cream scoop. Let's say each let's use cake pops. I definitely would scoop out the cake pops and measure them. So let's say each cake pop had to be 2 ounces. Or if you're making rolls and you want your dough to equal 2 ounces, 3 ounces, that's portion control. So what we do is put it on the scale, not so much eyeballing it. The scale will let me know that each roll, piece of dough, or cookie dough measures 2 ounces. I think scales, again, I believe scales are essential in the baking world. It's not optional. So if you are serious and want to bake like a pro, if you want to take your baking skills to the next level, this is one of the keys to your success, is having a kitchen scale. Unfortunately, many recipes come only with measurements in cups, right? Or volume. which can deter people from using scales. So if you're used to seeing recipes in cups, or I have found lately that I do see a lot of recipes that will give you the cups plus the grams. I never understood what that was, but I do see now, of course, after going to school, that more and more people are using it. But I think the average person doesn't know why it's in grams. So, like I said, you see a lot of recipes that are in volume or cups, and you either don't know how to use a scale, or you're a little intimidated by using the scale. But what I will say is, if you are someone who is looking to sell your items for profit, um, you would have to convert your recipes. I know someone who reached out to me because they were looking to start selling their product, and they wanted to know how do they price it. So the first thing I told them to do was, you have to convert your recipes. You cannot effectively cost out your recipe if your recipe is in cups. You need to make your recipes into weight. That's the first thing you need to do. So how do you do that? How do you convert a recipe from volume into weight? There's two ways to do it. You can either do it recipe by recipe, or I encourage people to create a chart for the most commonly used ingredients that they use in baking, like your flour, like your sugar. Um, let's say flour, sugar, cocoa powder, bread flour, wheat flour, right? Because the weights will be different. Um, don't say 1 cup of flour equals the same amount as wheat flour, because it may not, right? All purpose flour is a little heavier than cake flour. So this is the way I suggest people do it, and this is what I took my time to do for all of my recipes. And when I say I took the time to really narrow down my recipes, and first of all, a lot of them are professional recipes, but if I have found recipes that are that I had to convert, I've gone through these steps, and I've made each recipe my own. So, like I said, this is the first thing that you need to do, is convert your recipe. So the first thing you do is measure an ingredient with a cup, right? So take a cup of sugar. Well, in this example, we'll use sugar. Measure a cup of sugar, right? So you literally are taking a cup of sugar and putting it on a scale, right? You need to see how much that weighs in ounces or weight, right? So measure on a scale. So you put a bowl on the scale, pour that sugar in that bowl, that cup of sugar in the bowl, and see what you get, right? I say do this 3 times for accuracy, and you take the average, right? So let's say you do it and you get 1 cup equals 140 grams. Then the second time you do it, it equals 142 grams. And then the next time you get it, it equals 141 grams. I probably would go with 140 because it's even. It's a nice even number to divide. But do it 3 times and take the average. Make sure when you are scooping that sugar, you're doing it the same exact way. The same exact way. You will find that 1 gram it's not a big difference between 1 gram and 2 grams. Now on your chart, you can say 1 cup of sugar equals 140 grams. But I do believe I have a conversion chart that I've created. But my recipes I've been using for so long, so it is what it is. All my recipes are converted. Fluid ounces are used to measure volume and how much space something takes up. This measurement is used for liquid ingredients like water or milk. I mentioned before in a previous video that I used to measure rice in this liquid measuring cup. That's what I had growing up. I didn't know the difference. That was just so foreign to me that it wasn't the same. A cup was a cup to me. There's just one category of ingredients that I generally don't measure by weight when baking, and that's anything measured in teaspoons. The small quantities of ingredients such as salt, baking powder, baking soda, or even cocoa powder are too light to be accurately measured by the average kitchen scale. Kitchen scales measure in whole grams, which means that if you add 4.75 grams of something to a bowl, the scale will read only 4 grams. Anything under 1 gram registers as 0 on the scale. When these ingredients are measured with a tablespoon, they are generally heavy enough to weigh accurately. That concludes this video on the importance of accuracy. I hope that now you have a better understanding of why scales are so important in the baking world. If you have any questions about the importance of accuracy, about scales, please drop your question in the comments and I'll be sure to answer your questions. As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel and hit the notification button so you never miss out when I go live or upload new videos and content. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.